College football nerds here talking USC and Colorado. Got Nerd Josh with me. He took a little bit of a hiatus last week, and he is back in action, and we've got some things to announce. If you are new to the show, please like and subscribe. If you are not new to this show, please like and subscribe. We recently launched our model that we're going to talk about later that predicts games. We've run game simulations with for years. collegefootballnerds.com, and we have opened it up to you. So it's free. You can go play around with it. Do as many simulations as your heart's content. Do know that the model will give you some weirdness right now because there's not a lot of data out there, but it is still super fun, and it draws out some pretty interesting things also on that website. You'll see things like relative performance numbers. So not just how good you rank overall, but how you rank relative to how your performance is against your opponents. And plenty of normal stats, box scores, things like that. So go check it out, collegefootballnerds.com. All right, Josh, this game, USC, Colorado, it's interesting to me because, a lot of people I think were caught off guard. Most people weren't caught off guard with Oregon and Colorado, but some people were, and I think that it was really a testament to how well Colorado played early in the year when they weren't expected to. You might could write off one game as being a fluke, but two, and then come from behind against Colorado State, three. Those are things that Colorado hasn't done in the past. You can take away all of the Deion hype and everything else. At the end of the day, you still got to play the football games. And they showed a lot of things that we haven't seen from them. But there are some concerns there, and I think that some of them are going to show up in this game as well, and it's really just along the lines of scrimmage. But it kind of shows how if you don't have those things on the lines of scrimmage, both sides of the ball, it really can impact areas where you even might have an advantage with skill play.
Yeah. Look, we'll probably do a separate video this week on terms like transitive property and moving the goalposts, because I feel like it's been the entirety of Twitter. But something I've consistently held with Colorado is the goalpost for Colorado is 7-5. Given what Shedeur Sanders inherited, given the fact that this was a roster that, had he taken the same roster they had last year, was almost certainly going to go 2-10. Making a bowl game is a big deal, and if you can hit 7 wins, given what he inherited and how much he had to turn over, and the fact that he has so many players that haven't played together before, that's a huge accomplishment. Period. And there were a lot of people that I think, quite frankly, almost lost their minds a little bit in trying to think that they were going to go undefeated and make the playoff, or, I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility, but like Shedeur Sanders for Heisman, those were not realistic things given the totality of that roster. They do not have the offensive line for them to really have a Heisman-level quarterback, unless he's doing crazy things like a Bryce Young, where he's just making plays all by himself, running all around the field like crazy. He can't be who he is, which is a very high-level, heady pocket passer quarterback, and operate at a high level versus good defenses with that line, because he does not have time to do that. And that's the problem with him. I mean, he's mobile, but he's not really a dual-threat guy. So, if they get pressure, he's going to get sacked, and he's been sacked a lot. And so that's the conundrum for Colorado. And I think with the Oregon game, what it really exposed is twofold. One, the defense wasn't great, and we knew it. Colorado was a much higher level offense. Now, TCU moved the ball really well too, but TCU had multiple turnovers that kind of kept them from scoring in this range, which would have won them the game. Nebraska, as we now know, offensively is just truly incompetent versus any level of competition, I think. And so, you played a really good team that was offensively and defensively really good, that was motivated to play you, and the skill gaps just showed up. And if you were getting blown off the ball on the line of scrimmage, which they were on both sides, it's hard to win. And that's just the crux of it. And it doesn't matter really what they do from a coaching perspective with the sort of talent they have in the line of scrimmage. 7-5 is a huge accomplishment for this team. And everything they've done is due to the fact that I think they showed up week one, the better coached, better prepared team than TCU, which is surprising with a transfer roster compared to guys that have been theoretically practicing together for years and a defense that mostly returned a lot of starters at TCU. I mean, that's a real testament to this coaching staff. But as other teams gel, the talent differential starts to show up. And USC, though, is an interesting case, I think, because this is a team that has been, to a certain degree, someone that's very offensively minded, but defensively so bad that they've struggled with teams they shouldn't struggle with the past couple of years, as I drop an earbud. And so when you play someone like Colorado that's been offensively really good, it does start to raise questions about how much of a competitive contest that can be. Because even if you have an advantage, just like the TCU game, this game is won based on touchdowns and points. It ain't won on yards. It ain't won on yard per play differentials. And in that case, I think it does, at least in theory, give Colorado a puncher's chance here.
The flip side of this, I think that USC is probably tired of hearing that they are overrated because they have bad defense. And so I wonder, this is an opportunity.
They do have a bad defense.
Oh, that was really scary. I didn't know what this demon was that was speaking to me in my ear. So this is an opportunity, I think, for them to shut down an opponent and showcase and flex some muscle, because I don't think that there's any – it's undeniable they're going to score points in this game. I think 40 is the floor, the absolute floor in this game. So they're going to want to showcase that they can play some good defensive football. How realistic is that against Colorado? Do you think that maybe they can, because of the lines of scrimmage, where there's a situation where Colorado might have a great offense for a lot of people, but they're going to hit some real break points because they are deficient there? Or is this a situation where, while there might be a floor on how many points that USC is going to score on anybody, there's also a floor on how many they're going to hold somebody to, and it's probably higher than they're comfortable with?
Okay, we're going to play a game, Daniel, so I want you to stick with me here. Don't look anything up. No cheating.
Okay.
So Colorado, in terms of absolute yard per play, total yardage is a sub 100th defense, right? But we have our fun relative performance metrics, which is basically taking all those numbers and saying, based off what was expected given competition, how'd you do? Who do you think between USC and Colorado has the worst passing yard per game defense?
I would relative or overall?
Relative performance.
Probably USC.
It's USC. Who has the worst rushing yard per game relative performance?
I would say that would be Colorado.
It's USC. Who has the worst passing yard per attempt defense?
I mean, we got to say USC at this point, right?
Right. Worst rushing yard per attempt defense?
Got to say USC.
It's USC. All across the board in our relative performance metrics, USC is actually worse than Colorado. In fact, USC, of the 5 major relative performance metrics, they're 100th or worse than 3 of the 5. The only thing they're better at, oddly, is points. So in relative performance for scoring defense, we have USC 35th and Colorado 75th, which means basically USC has been terrible at everything but has held teams to fewer points, which probably actually just suggests that they've played teams that are just not good enough offensively to where they can keep up, and they end up in shootouts where the other teams are in desperation mode, and so they're going for it on fourth down, stalling, that kind of thing, which has inflated them a little bit. But it's interesting to me that I think the perception is Colorado's defense is so bad that USC is going to get fits, but at least in our metrics, given who USC's played, and again, they've played bad competition, which sometimes means it's hard to shine, USC is actually worse. And so I do think there is something to the fact that USC's defense may be that bad. That's why I was whispering it in your ear like a demon earlier.
Well, and I also think that, people, in a lot of cases, people will say, well, we score a ton of points and, we let our foot off the gas and put our subs in, and we give up a lot of points to bad teams late. And that is usually a pretty reasonable argument. But against Arizona State and against San Jose State, they only gave up 1 score in the fourth quarter. So that was consistently across the board. They were giving up points throughout the whole game. Did hold Stanford at 10, so that's interesting. But yeah, so talk about that a little bit in terms of relative to the point spread, because it's 23-24 out there with, they're going to have to hit like 73 to hit an over. Talk a little bit about what that score's got to look like, and kind of how you think we get there. If we're hitting USC in the over, what does it look like when we get there?
And if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead and transition to the model too, because
Sure.
yeah, it really informs it, right? So we've got this model. You can run it. It's week 4. It's still experimental, and we only run it on this season's data. We don't use prior season's data recruiting rankings, which most people do at this point because there's not enough data, so they kind of fill it in with what did you look like last year as a buffer. So it'll give you some pretty crazy results for a lot of teams. But it's a good idea to say, just based purely on the season at this point, how are you going to do? It has USC 53, Colorado 28. That's really in line, actually, with what Vegas is suggesting. And the stuff it's spitting out really gives you the reason why, which is USC's projected to have 9 yards per play. 9.5 yards per attempt, but 7.8 yards per carry. Colorado is expected to have 6 yards per play, mainly passing, 8.3 yards per attempt, 3.3 yards per carry. Where's the difference coming? It's the fact that actually our system has Colorado as the better passing offense by a slight margin. The one area where Colorado is really a top 15 team is they are a top 15 passing offense. They're 15th in the country in our metrics. USC is only 19th. The problem is the complement to that. USC is the second best rushing offense in the country in our system, behind Duke, oddly enough, that we're doing the other video for. Colorado is 66th. And it's that number that really drives this, because the rushing yardage at 7.8 yards per carry, 7.9 yards per carry by USC is devastating. If you cannot stop a team from running for over 6 yards per carry, you will not stop them from scoring ever, especially when they throw the ball as well as USC does, whereas Colorado has to throw. And the reason for that being, let's say you complete 75% of your passes. Well, you think I'm going to constantly get first downs, right? Because I'll throw an incompletion 1 out of every 4 times. That's not really the way things work, because every so often 2 of those incompletions will happen one after another. All it takes is incompletion, 8-yard pass, incompletion, and you punt. But if you can run the ball, you can go incompletion, 8-yard pass, run for 8 yards, first down, reset, reset, reset. Colorado doesn't have the ability to do that, and that puts a cap on their scoring. So it really just comes down to the fact that it's really not the defenses, it's the fact that USC, in a balanced sense, is that good passing and throwing, and their scoring is first in the country, 55 points per game. They score like mad. Colorado scores 32 points per game in comparison. So just keeping pace with USC is extremely difficult, but keeping pace with them with that run game, when you don't have a complementary run game, it's just virtually impossible. There are going to be points where Shedeur Sanders gets sacked, and if he gets sacked on a drive, they're all but dead. Whereas USC is probably going to have a positive result almost every play. A lot of the same way Oregon did, but offensively even better. And it's going to be probably more competitive, because I think Colorado is going to score a lot of points in this game. But, 28, 35, even 40 points normally is a lot of points versus an opponent. But I don't know that any of those numbers are going to be enough to win, because USC is, I don't know if they're the most dominant offense in the country, but if they're not, I don't want to know who is, because it's just an extremely capable offense. And I think Colorado's just going to have a hard time keeping them from running up and down the field.
Well, and I think that it's matchups matter, right? And Colorado could probably beat a number of really high-powered offenses, but it's how those offenses are run that matter for a team like Colorado that's smaller size, not great on the lines of scrimmage. People don't understand that Lincoln Riley, like Heupel, but especially Lincoln Riley, his offense is a running offense. The year that he, put up points in the playoffs against Alabama and broke all those records, that offense at Oklahoma, they were averaging like 8 yards a carry, something insane like that. And I don't care what league it's in Big 12, Pac-12, SEC. That's a dominant offense, and it's because they can run the ball. And if you have somebody that can run like that and you have a Heisman Trophy quarterback, it's hard, because you got to be able to stop the run first. And I don't know, even committing extra guys or going single high safety, Colorado's going to be able to do that. Josh, talk a little bit about how, I think that Travis Hunter might still be out in this game. I don't know that it was the huge difference maker against Oregon, but talk a little bit about, with the understanding that he might not play, where Colorado might have some advantage or some opportunities, maybe not to win, but to keep this game a lot more interesting than the spread might indicate.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that they do have a good receiving core. I mean, Weaver and Horn, the transfers from Florida, not UF, but Florida, the state of Florida. I mean, they're good receivers. I mean, all across the board, there's a lot of talent. I think one of the big things that they've had going for them is, and I'm noticing that doesn't seem to be listed on some of our stats. We maybe have an error there. But the running back has been really effective, too, at catching the ball out of the backfield and making explosive plays. And when you combine those two things, it creates a lot of strain on the opposing defense to be able to keep pace. USC traditionally has struggled under Lincoln Riley. I say traditionally like it's been very long. Maybe Lincoln Riley traditionally has struggled with Alex Grinch of doing a good job of not busting assignments and leaving guys open. And Colorado's offense spreads you out really wide, and they attack you at every part of the field, and Sanders is very good at understanding that offense and delivering it effectively, where they're constantly getting guys in space. That's kind of the nightmare scenario for USC defensively. And given the fact that they're explosive, not just at receiver, but also running back, I could see in particular where once USC starts getting spread out, they just get gouged by throws out of the backfield to the running back for maybe big plays or touchdowns, where they're just sort of running all over the field, and they take bad angles, they don't tackle well, and just like what happened with TCU late, it was two long plays by the running back that really broke that game open, and I could see a similar situation here. So to me, that's probably the biggest X factor in the game.
All right, I'm ready to give a pick on this one. I don't see a situation where Colorado wins this game, but I'm not sure that they are out of the woods on covering. They're going to put up some points. Give me 31-49 USC in a tighter one than maybe Vegas thinks.
Yeah, I'm probably going to pick USC, but also not enough to cover. I'm going to go crazy high. I'm actually going to say 63-45. I think it's one of those games where USC is going to win by a margin, but it's just going to be slowly building a lead because Colorado is going to score the entire game, which is probably going to cause a lot of conversation to spin back up. Now, maybe USC proves me wrong. One of two things is going to happen here. Either USC's athleticism, given the line of scrimmage issues, means they can get pressure and get sacks, and then they can snowball, or the way that they've panned out defensively so far this year, given all the relative metrics that we're seeing, is going to show up again, and then USC's defense is going to be a sieve again. In which case, we may have to start considering, really as good as it is about Colorado, it's just, again, another indication that USC is going to be shootout after shootout anytime they play a top 40 offense. And yeah, I did confirm. Oddly enough, Dylan Edwards isn't in our sheet, but I think, yeah. I think this is a game where we're going to learn a lot about Colorado. We're going to learn a lot about USC. I think if USC wins this game in the fashion that Oregon does, that's a statement about USC, not a bad statement about Colorado. That's going to say a lot about their defense's ability to step up against what I think is a legitimately very good offense. It is. Even if they're somewhat one-dimensional, they're very good. And if Colorado is able to run with them and stay with them, I think that is going to throw up some real warning signs. But I also don't necessarily think it means that USC's horrid unless that number gets over 40. Like if they score 30 points and they win, 51-33 or 35, I'm actually not going to be that upset with USC. It's really the 40-point mark, I think, where if you want to be an actual playoff caliber team, well, that's the point where I'm going to start wondering if this is another one of those Lincoln Riley squads. So that's kind of where I'm setting things. Yeah, it's weird. Dylan Edwards is obviously our team data includes all his rushes, so it works correctly in the model. But Dylan Edwards is still not actually showing up in the player statistics, which undoubtedly is a data source error because they screwed up a bunch of the transfers.
All right, well, that's it for us on USC and Colorado. Let us know in the comments what you think the score is going to be, and we will get at it with you and let you know how you are wrong. All right, thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week, and God bless.